Having completed the excavation, the concrete foundation, and putting up the walls, it was now time to deal with the trusses. This is definitely a two-person job, at the very least as far as it concerns getting the trusses into position initially. They're about 26 feet long for this 24-foot wide garage, and so my son and I were working off of ladders on opposite ends and just setting the trusses into position upside down, letting them hang there. And then you'll see here I went into the center and I flipped them into place. Here I'm doing I believe it's called the gable end truss, and I've put a little stop. It's a 2x6 cutoff that I had. I screwed that to the outside of the building, and then also put a piece of sheathing, same thickness as the sheathing on the building, in order to create some spacing, and secured everything to it.
Okay, so this is my plan. I've got a lower, I don't know if it's called a ridge truss or anyways, an outer gable, whatever it's called. I'm supposed to take some 2x4s, butt them into the end of my first full-size truss, and then it'll sit like this on the end of that end truss and overhang by about 10.5 or 10.75 inches. Just like my trusses themselves, I'm going 24 inches on center-ish for this. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll be there, right? I have no idea. Let's say right there.
With all those up in place, it was time for me to add some bracing across the top of everything. This is just a temporary way of fastening everything together so that I'm able to lift the pieces up until they wedge themselves underneath that brace. Then I can measure out how far apart they're supposed to be, put them in position, make sure everything is nice and plumb and square, and then temporarily tack them in place with a couple of screws and or nails. Now, that's not to say that this process wasn't simple and that you don't have to be careful. They're just on there with friction, and as I pushed this one, I began to find my life flashing before my eyes.
This is only held up by friction right now.
Here I am working off of an aluminum step ladder, which, by the way, aluminum step ladders, they're death traps. They want to flex, they want to bend. Get fiberglass, find something else. Aluminum is brutal.
What I learned is to prevent cracking, it's good to pre-drill. Seems to be necessary for these, especially since it sits so far down. I would have liked it if these came up a little higher. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just going off of what I've seen on the internet and all of that, hoping that I'm right. So I'm sure in that last part there, where I was showing you installing these hurricane hangers, there were probably some of you that were just screaming because I was doing it wrong. Like I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I even looked it up and I just completely brain farted, I think because I couldn't figure out how to do the end one here. Ignore me from what I said before. Basically, this here is actually supposed to slide out and over like that, which makes a lot more sense. So I'm gonna have to pick up more hangers because those other ones ain't coming off. and we'll just go with what I got here now. I am no longer having to pre-drill because now it's not 6 things going into the exact same grain cabin, which could have been my first clue, but engineers wouldn't screw it up that badly. So I gotta focus on what I'm doing.
Okay, with these last 3, I need to make sure that I don't end up getting stuck in a situation where I can't flip them. So I've already flipped one up and just leaned it against. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this one right up against that one, flip the outside one against my, whatever it's called, the short truss, I don't know. Slide that one up there, flip this one and lean it against, and then I should be good to finish everything off. I hope. Well, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Got all my trusses up now. So at this point here, I think it's time to break for the day. Spend some time with the dog who's desperately following me around, wanting me to play with his ball. And spend some time with my wife as well. And then I think the next thing that I'm going to be doing is putting my, I don't even know what they're called, not really ladders, but putting my little extension pieces coming off of these here on both sides, and I'm throwing up my different bracings and all of that kind of stuff. After that, it'll be time for some sheathing and some roofing. So I'm pretty excited about that. We're getting somewhere. While I get to work here on the gable end overhangs, let me just encourage you to stick around to the end of this video where I will be breaking down the costs from this part of the project and adding them into the project so far. As well, if you've been enjoying this video series or just this video in particular, be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment letting me know what you think or any suggestions, tips, or tricks that you might have so that others can learn from you. With that, let's move back to the build here. I wanted to make sure that all my spacings were correct, so I threw a tape measure on the gable end to check all the spacings of the cross pieces before I grabbed this first cross piece and started to put it into position. I was having a lot of trouble with my hand placement here. I figured there would be no worse end to the workday than ending up in the emergency room because of a framing nail driving through the hand or the wrist, and so you'll see that trying to get the board in position, have a handle on the framing nail, and also keep my hand clear was at the forefront of everything that I was thinking about. So I drove in through the truss and then toe-nailed into the gable end, and that worked really well. My mark, and I'm going to center a stud over here, vertical stud. On this outer gable here, the studs are pretty much spaced exactly how I want them. It's only this inner rafter that I've got to be dealing with. So we're measuring inner at this point and then just centering on those uppers on the outer gables. So what I need to do now is I need to measure the angle on the end of these, are they called gable ends or something like that, to make sure that I can get them all nice. So I've just got an angle gauge, bevel gauge thing here, and I'll show you what I'm gonna do. All I'm doing is I'm setting the bevel gauge up here, and I am going to get it
so that it's straight up and down. And tighten it down. Let's double check that. Bring it up to the end here. And right. Just like that. Now I'll go set my miter saw to whatever that angle is.
Before we go, let's talk costs. I had my engineered trusses made and delivered for $1,517.25 Canadian. I'd already purchased the framing nails for doing the framing, so there was absolutely no need for me to buy any more for this part of the project. I did have to purchase a few 2x4s, so that cost me about $48, and then my hurricane ties and the special nails for those came to around another $50 for a total on the trusses of about $1,615.25 Canadian. So that brings the grand total for the garage so far to $14,143.15. It's adding up. We still got a ways to go. Check out a couple of clips from the next video in this build series.
Oh yeah, I hate this.